Right. So, in today's session, we are going to discuss about identity access management. As part of managing the IT environment, irrespective of the size of the organization. So, IT environment where we need to focus more on the identity access management, which is essentially required. Either it can be uh, the systems like human resource systems, or it can be a mail system, or it can be in corporate applications. So whatever the systems are we going to use, these systems needs to interface with the identity access management, because majorly IAM plays a vital and important role in making IT operations more efficient as well as secure by supporting and as well as enforcing user provisioning. At the same time, the kind of rules like, for example, validating the access of non-corporate users. At the same time, an architectural approach to develop IAM systems by implementing organization probability of achieving consistent and comprehensive IAM solutions. All these things. In this regard, when any organization we try to understand from identity access management point of view, which maintains enterprise architecture, the kind of solutions you are going to develop, which normally deploy and header the enterprise models that can be reflected in the organization EA artifacts. In context to that, there are being into identity access management when we are learning, it's always important for us to. So we need to identify when it comes to the identity access management. There are different terminologies which normally we need to understand. So understanding about identity terminologies, identifying of terminologies is all something which we need to identify. That's what something we need to do. So here, this is where generally identity access management terminologies were. So we need to understand about the terminologies over here. That is what something which normally we need to understand. That's what something we need to do. So there are some IAM terminologies being a person, right? So because either it can be role for a business analyst, because normally business analyst will work even in identity access management, something like sailpoint. There are different applications now and then we are using, like sailpoint, etc. All that. So to want to make our career out of as in when you are enrolled, right? So role of identity access management and all. First of all, we need to knowledge. We need to understand about the terminologies, because whenever we attend for an interview or whenever we are working on any of the organization or when we are implementing something, understanding the terminologies is what something which is required. So there are different terminologies which we need to know. So one, we call it as access management. This is the first one, because access management, which is useful to identify the information to provide access controls and all by protecting the resources such as computer systems, database, physical spaces, all that. The second about architecture. So whatever are we talking about, the next one is called architecture. So whatever the architectures we have, right? So the kind of frameworks, as well as the kind of design and deployment operations, information technology architectures. Majorly, these are all the one which are providing us to have a structure whereby organization can standardize the technologies, at the same time aligning the IT infrastructure with digital transformation policies, etc. All that. Next, we need to understand about the terminology from the architecture overview point of view, because whatever the architectures are we going to create, so we need to implement the architecture overview. This is also one of the key and important element to be focused more on. At the same time, we need to understand the architecture patterns. There are different architecture patterns which normally we use, right? So different architecture patterns is being used over here. What are the essential patterns to categorize the IT infrastructure in any of the organizations so that it can guide and as well as deploy the choices of identity access management solutions, etc. All that. Next, as and when which is widely required in industry, which is of enterprise architecture, because this enterprise architecture consists of lot many. It consists of um, business architecture, it consists of application architecture, systems architecture, data architecture. All these things are comes under this architecture, enterprise architecture point of view. Next, one of the important terminology one has to be identified, which is called identity governance and administration. Right, so identity governance and administration, which is called IGA in short, right? So identity governance and administration is also one of the key and important terminology one has to be understood, because this identity governance administration includes whatever the kind of collection and as well as use of identity information, as well as the governance process, which ensures the right person has the right access to the right system at the right time, right? So this is all something comes under the identity governance, because what are the required rules and regulations do we need to follow? Everything will be in this regard. So these are the basic terminologies, because of course there were many, like something like TA, technical architecture, single sign-on, security assertion markup languages, right? So there are different terminologies which being into identity access management, which has to be understood, which has to be known with. Now, at the same time, when it comes to the application architecture, when it comes to the architectural approaches, architectural patterns, etc. So implementation of the application, either it can be a client server applications or entire applications, or it can say or it can be any kind of components. Because when it comes to the architectural components and all, there are different components which normally we use whenever we are trying to understand about the components, especially in context to the IAM itself is concerned, identity access management. There are different components we have. The first component is called on-premise corporate directory. This is what something which normally we use. This is what we call it as a corporate directory stands for, right? So this is what we call it as on-premise. This is one component. Generally, this is a kind of directory service that enables authentication to access enterprise resources and all. Generally, these are all typically contains Generally, these are the one which are typically contains the directory objects which presents in human as well as non-human identity, all that. Next one at about on-premise federation service. Okay, on-premise federation service is also one of the key element, right? So when it comes to identity services, we need to implement the common access management capabilities like authentication, authorizations, and all for enterprise applications. But typically, this supports identity standards like SAML or OpenID Connects, which enables access to external as well as internal resources. Next, identity sync service, right? So the third one about identity sync service. This is also one of the key and important, because when we are implementing service infrastructure services which monitor directory objects in enterprise directory for any changes in synchronization changes and all, which must be mapped to the cloud directory objects, etc. So that the sync directions and all everything can be either it can be a one way or a two way will be used. Last but not least, when it comes to the one more component, one we need to understand about identity access management service. This is also one of the key and important element one has to understand. So this is also one of the key element, identity access management service. We call it as IAM service in short, right? So because whatever the kind of platform services in public cloud we are going to implement, whatever the core identity access management capabilities, either it can be authentication or it can be federation, access management and all. And this can be leveraged to access on-premise resources and all everything as well. So these are the major components when it comes to the implementation of IAM is what something being into the analyst roles and all everything is what something we have to know. Next, when it comes to the hybrid IAM itself is concerned, whatever the user provisioning you do, whatever the kind of profile data, whatever the kind of single sign-on cloud environment, all these things are also few of the crucial elements wherein to implement with. But being a BA, whenever we try to understand about this IAM process, whenever you're trying to understand about categories of identity lifecycle, identity access management, as in when, as I mentioned you, because identity governance administration is one of the core important element. When it comes to the identity governance and administration process is concerned, here you can see, right, governance and identity administration process is concerned. Being into business analyst role, being into analyst roles and all, we need to support some corporate requirements like administering and as well as accounting credentials, at the same time identity and accounting provisioning, managing the entitles, segregation of duties, role management, analytics and reporting, right? So these are the corporate requirements which being into analyst role, one has to be created because we need to identify and we need to develop these requirements. We need to identify these requirements, all this stuff. So this is all something which we are trying to understand about identity access management, irrespective of the kind of tools are we going to use. Either it can be sailpoint or any other tools and all. This is what something we need to know. Now, this is where generally identity lifecycle is all about. You can see there are different components wherein we have. So either it can be of password management, because generally tools like password vaults are more than SSOs, IGAs, right? So which majorly ensures users to not to have to remember many different passwords and all to access the applications. Password management is one of the component we use. At the same time, integration connectors. This is also some of the important element under identity lifecycle categories, all that. At the same time, access request approval workflows, automated deprovisioning. At the same time, attestation reporting, followed by this recertification of user entitlements, segregation of duties, access reviews, role-based management, analytics and reporting, right? So all these things are comes under the kind of components which we are required to implement architectural implement identity governance administration processes concept. So whenever we are trying to implement, because being a BA as well as the kind of roles we are going to play as an analyst, these IGA system components are something essentially required apart from the requirements, whatever I have specified you earlier so far. Now, when it comes to the architectural IAM architectural components are concerned, these are the different components we use. Because whatever I have discussed with you about that governance process, this is about IAM architecture components are concerned. When it comes to the architecture components itself is concerned, one of the process under IAM is about identity provisioning, because it creates identity records based on the initiation from trusted entity sources, maybe from the HR systems, etc. All that. Next, one more is account provisioning, which creates account in enterprise directories based on the birthright provisioning rules. At the same time, it also supports the creation of application accounts based on request approval workflows, etc. All that. Next, one more process under identity access management is called entitle management. This supports the workflows and as well as administration requirements, which may be majorly enable us to use to group role mapping that enables access management rule creations, all these things. So these are the major areas wherein we need to know, right? So as far as IAM process itself is concerned, these are the major areas wherein we need to be focused, wherein we need to perform. Whenever we are working on the IAM process itself is concerned, these are the major areas we need to see, followed by the kind of typical components what we have, whatever the typical components of authorization services and all we are having, the kind of policy control points what we have, either it can be policy administration point or policy informant points or policy decision points or policy information points. So these are the different components which normally be used in context to the identity access management. Being a analyst, one has to be known with. So this is all about this identity access management itself is concerned. So if you have any questions, please go ahead.